He was born in 1491 in the proud castle of Loyola, nestled in the green valleys of Basque Spain. The youngest of 13 children, Ignatius came into a world of nobility, tradition, and rigid discipline. His family dreamed that he would serve kings, not saints. As a child, Ignatius was captivated not by prayer, but by the shining tales of knights and warriors. He held wooden swords, imagining himself a hero of chivalry. His heart beat not for silence in chapels, but for the clash of steel and the roar of battle. He was clever, ambitious, and restless. Tutors complained of his stubborn will. He loved pageantry, fine clothes, and the admiration of others. Even in childhood, Ignatius burned with a fire of pride, a fire that would later be tested by suffering. The death of his mother left a scar on his young heart. The halls of the castle echoed with emptiness. He hid his sorrow behind pride, but in his soul, a quiet longing began to grow, a hunger for meaning that no sword could satisfy. Thus passed the childhood of Ignatius of Loyola, torn between the glitter of knights and the shadow of grief, between the call of ambition and the whisper of destiny. He did not yet know that the fire of his restless heart would one day be transformed into a flame that lit the world. Ignatius of Loyola grew into a young nobleman within the stone walls of his family castle. Surrounded by knights, weapons, and the echo of heroic tales, he admired the ideals of chivalry. His heart longed for honor, glory, and the admiration of others. He dressed in fine clothes, carried himself with pride, and sought the attention of noble courts. Ignatius dreamed of becoming a knight who would win fame in battle and the favor of great ladies. His ambition, however, was often mixed with vanity and restless desire. In his youth, Ignatius entered the service of powerful patrons. He observed the intrigues of court life and tried to prove himself through daring deeds. He was bold, sometimes reckless, and always eager for adventure. As a soldier, Ignatius trained with weapons and prepared for glory in battle. He believed his destiny was to rise through courage and valor. The battlefield promised him honor, yet also concealed the hardships that awaited him. Though his youth was filled with dreams of earthly glory, destiny prepared a different path. The young nobleman did not yet know that his pride and ambition would one day be tested by fire, shaping him into a man of faith. As Ignatius grew into early manhood, he was no longer content with dreaming of glory alone. He began to gather companions around him, young men who admired his courage and shared his restless ambition. These small circles became the seed of his first attempts at leadership. Ignatius spoke with passion and carried himself with authority. His fiery words stirred the hearts of those around him. Though his vision was still worldly, focused on honor and knightly fame, his natural charisma drew others to follow his lead. What began as conversations and shared dreams soon grew into an informal brotherhood. They trained together, discussed ideals of bravery, and imagined great deeds they would one day perform. Ignatius enjoyed being at the center of this youthful fellowship. Ignatius insisted on discipline among his companions. He wanted them to be strong, united, and loyal. Even though these gatherings were small, they carried the mark of his future mission, shaping men with a common vision. In those youthful gatherings, Ignatius could not yet see the full path ahead, but his desire to lead, to inspire, and to unite others already revealed the man he would become. These first groups were only shadows of a greater company he would one day form. In the year 1534, Ignatius of Loyola and a small group of companions gathered in a modest chapel in Paris. There, they made solemn vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. With burning faith, they promised to dedicate their lives to the service of God and the Church. From those vows, the Society of Jesus was born. Ignatius became its first superior general. The Jesuits were not monks behind walls. They were soldiers of faith, ready to travel across continents to teach, to heal, and to defend their beliefs. The Jesuits soon spread across Europe and beyond. They opened schools and universities, becoming renowned teachers. They traveled to distant lands, India, Japan, and the Americas, bringing knowledge and faith to new peoples. During the turmoil of the Reformation, the Jesuits stood as defenders of Catholicism. They preached with passion, guided rulers, and advised kings. Their sharp minds and disciplined lives made them a powerful force in the Counter-Reformation. Through teaching, preaching, and missions, the Jesuits shaped history. What began with a vow in a small chapel grew into a worldwide order. Ignatius had once sought earthly glory, but in founding the Jesuits, he gave the world a legacy of faith, discipline, and action. From the very beginning, Ignatius of Loyola and his companions looked toward Jerusalem. For them, the Holy City was more than a place on a map. It was the heart of salvation history, the land where Christ had lived, suffered, and risen. To walk there, to serve there, was to follow in his footsteps. They chose Jerusalem because it was the meeting point of faith and history. It was where heaven and earth had touched. Ignatius and his companions believed that serving in Jerusalem would renew their spirits and give their mission unshakable authority. In their youth, Ignatius and his followers dreamed of settling in the Holy City. They spoke of teaching, guiding pilgrims, and living in poverty as servants of Christ. They imagined a small brotherhood rising in the very soil where Christianity had been born. Yet the road to Jerusalem was not easy. Political turmoil, wars, and the dangers of travel often kept them away. Their dream of building a permanent community in the Holy Land was tested again and again. Still, their hearts remained bound to the city of David and Christ. Even when they could not remain in Jerusalem, the city continued to shape their identity. It stood as a symbol of sacrifice, faith, and holy mission. For Ignatius and the Jesuits, Jerusalem was not only a place to reach, it was a vision to carry in their souls wherever they went. After his youthful years of ambition and vanity, Ignatius of Loyola's path was forever changed. On the battlefield of Pamplona, a cannonball shattered his leg. The proud soldier was carried back to his family castle, where pain and silence became his only companions. During his long recovery, Ignatius asked for tales of knights, but instead he received the lives of Christ and the saints. In those pages, his restless heart was stirred. Vanity gave way to humility, and dreams of earthly glory yielded to visions of eternal service. Once healed, he abandoned his former life. Ignatius set out as a pilgrim, barefoot and poor, traveling to the shrine of Montserrat. There he laid down his sword before the Virgin's altar, a soldier no more, but a servant of God. In Manresa, he lived in a cave, fasting, praying, and battling the storms within his soul. It was there that he wrote the first lines of what would become the Spiritual Exercises, a guide to discipline and prayer that would change countless lives. Ignatius then dreamed of reaching Jerusalem, to live where Christ had walked. He journeyed to the Holy Land, but political dangers forced him to return. Though his feet could not remain in Jerusalem, his heart carried its vision forever. Determined to serve through learning, Ignatius studied in Paris, though older than most of his peers. There he gathered companions, Francis Xavier, Peter Faber, and others, young men who would share his mission. Together, they formed a brotherhood that no trial could break. In 1534, in a small chapel in Montmartre, they vowed poverty, chastity, and obedience. Years later, the Pope approved their order, the Society of Jesus. Ignatius became its first superior general, guiding the Jesuits with iron discipline and burning faith. Under his leadership, the Jesuits opened schools, guided rulers, preached across continents, and sailed to distant lands. They were teachers, missionaries, and soldiers of the Spirit. Everywhere they went, they carried Ignatius's vision of service. In his later years, Ignatius remained in Rome, writing letters of counsel, shaping his order, and guiding his companions. The man who once sought worldly honor now sought only the greater glory of God, ad majorem Dei gloriam. When he died in 1556, Ignatius left behind not riches but a spiritual army. His life had been reshaped from pride to humility, from soldier to saint. His legacy endured through the Jesuits, spreading faith, knowledge, and courage across the world.